Actually, I'll go back to my mission call because that's where I first learned that Montreal is in fact in Canada, not the United States. So at the time, they had a Major League Baseball team, the Montreal Expos, and apparently I didn't pay attention in geography, but I assumed because they had a baseball team, they were in the U.S. So when I got my mission call and I'm reading that I'm going to Montreal, Canada, I'm like, oh, there's a Montreal in Canada too. And then I found out it's French speaking. I had no idea they spoke French anywhere in North America. So that was pretty exciting. So Montreal is the biggest city in the province of Quebec in Canada. Quebec City is actually the capital of Quebec, the province, but Montreal is also in Quebec. So a lot of people hear Quebec or Montreal and they think they're very separate places, but Montreal is part of the French province, Quebec. However, in Montreal, which is actually an island in the middle of a big river, it's about maybe 50-50 English and French speakers. Most everybody speaks both. They kind of have to do business, or if you want to work in the donut shop or whatever, you got to be able to accommodate French and French and English speakers. So I thought that was really interesting when I first got there, and seeing, wow, everybody just speaks both, and sometimes in the same sentence. And throughout the rest of the mission, there are smaller towns. Some are very, very French, and very few people will speak English to you, and others are very, very English towns. And it all has to do with the history of what businesses were there and what families settled the areas. And so I'd say most of Quebec outside of Montreal and some suburbs of Montreal are very French speaking. As you get out towards Ontario, Canada, and Ottawa, the capital of Canada, which was also in our mission, it's very English out there. So it's a little bit about kind of the language there. There's also people from all over the world, which was exciting. So many different nationalities and languages, and good food to go with that. So that's a little bit about the language and culture there. As far as how that impacts the church and the wards there, when I was serving in downtown Montreal, I was there for about 6 months. The building we met in had 3 wards. One was English, one was French, and one was Spanish. And it was really interesting because a lot of people from all those wards spoke all 3 languages. Either they had served missions and learned Spanish or French, or they were native Spanish speakers and they had come and learned French and English to be able to go to school and work. And so that was exciting to see those wards, even though they were in different wards. But they interact. They had institute classes together. The young adults did. They would have activities together and singles family home evenings together. So it's really fun to see how the diverse cultures interact and in the church are united by the gospel. It also creates some challenges. In that English ward I served in, there were a lot of the investigators were immigrants who were there studying or had come to work or be with family and hadn't learned English that well yet, or didn't know French or Spanish. And so sometimes it's hard to create the unity within the ward as well, because there was so much diversity. We'd have a Mandarin Sunday school class, and we'd have some others, another group from Sri Lanka that would meet together and speak Tamil. So, I mean, it was interesting, but it created some challenges for the ward. One of the other challenges there is a lot of the young people in the smaller towns of Quebec, they go to the big city for school and then end up getting jobs there. And so some of the towns have a shrinking population, and it's hard on the church as well, because there aren't a lot of young families. They've moved out, gotten married, met somebody somewhere else. And so you'll have a couple people with young families, but a lot of, I don't want to say older, but grandparents that are in the ward, but not a lot of youth to support the continued growth in some of the branches and wards in the mission. So the province of Quebec historically was very French Catholic. There are a lot of just cathedrals and Catholic churches, some with beautiful architecture, and unfortunately a lot of them haven't been well maintained. And there's a very Catholic culture there, especially among generations of people at the time that were, over 50 years old. Most of them still practiced Catholicism, and there was also, unfortunately, there had been incidences in some towns where, and I don't know if it had to do with English and French conflicts that are part of the history, or other religious conflicts, but where people have lost a lot of faith and chosen to either be agnostic or just stop religious practice and maybe hold some of their own beliefs, but not worship together or serve in a religious community. And I say that was people probably like between age 30 and 50, and they all had different reasons. And some felt, maybe they something had happened in their family that took them away from the church. And it's not dissimilar from what we see in other parts of the world. But for some reason, there was a big impact, and it hurt the Catholic Church. A lot of their churches were not being well maintained; they were selling them, and as a missionary, it made it somewhat difficult too, because for some of these people, all they knew was the conflict they had with religious leaders of another faith, or from their past, or things they had heard from their parents or grandparents that made them uncomfortable about religion. And so, it was I guess it was an opportunity as well as a missionary to be like, this is what we believe. Like, what do you think about it? And just try and start a conversation and offer a new perspective on religion. And I think that's that's something that's helpful for anybody who's been offended, no matter what the faith is. Like, to have somebody give them fresh perspective and a new hope in believing in Christianity again. So, one exciting thing about the church, the LDS church history there, is President Monson, who's our prophet now, was the mission president there for a few years. And you read about his experiences in his biography, or he's shared some of them in conference stories. But a lot of the original membership in Quebec, a lot of them have personal experiences with him, with President Monson as a mission president. And a lot of the strength in the church are those people and their children and grandchildren now. One of the branches I served in, there was the Terrian family, and they were, if I remember right, they were converted. A group of several brothers and sisters, they all were converted and baptized during President Monson's presidency as the mission president. And so they now have several sets of children and grandchildren that have spread throughout several towns and created several branches, and are really a strength to the new members there, because they've been, they have a multi-generational LDS family, which was not very common at all in the mission. So the church is growing a ton. So I was just there in this past November, a few months ago, and there's been 1 or 2 stakes added to the mission. So I think they have 3 or 4 stakes now. It used to be just 1 stake and a district. And they also have a temple in Montreal, which was originally dedicated in 2000. They actually rebuilt it and rededicated it just this past year. That's one reason we went. We got to go to the open house, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. The members are so excited to be a part of that. One interesting thing that did happen on my mission that sparked a lot of growth for some areas was we had some of the old video cassettes, the VHS cassettes that the church used, like the Lamb of God, translated into French and ran commercial advertisements for it on TV for people in the area to call and get a free video. And so the missionaries would deliver the video when somebody placed an order. And we had an incredible response to the commercials and advertisements that were run. And a lot of it was actually among a Haitian community in Montreal. And many Haitian families were converted to the gospel. And having these videos available and the advertising also helped a lot of people who had lost contact with the church get back in touch with missionaries and find where they, what ward they needed to be going to, and they had lost contact since they moved from their home country. So that was exciting to watch that play out. I served in the Canada Montreal Mission from January 2002 to January 2004, and let's see, my first area was Hull, 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 and that's out near Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And then from there I went to La Prairie, which is on the south shore, which is what they call across the river on the south side from Montreal City. And next I did serve in Montreal, downtown Montreal for about 6 months. And from there I went to a town called Shawinigan. And then I went to a place called Jonquière, which is in the north part of the mission, about 6 hours from the mission home. And finally, my last area, and my sixth and last area, was Saint-Hyacinthe, and I spent the last 3 months of my mission there.